What if I told you that after months, maybe even years of LSAT prep, you could still underperform on test day because of a handful of completely preventable mistakes? It happens far more often than people realize. When I talk to students after the exam, they almost never say, I didn't know the material. Instead, they'll say things like, I got thrown off by the proctor, I wasted too much time on one question, I kept checking the timer, I couldn't stop thinking about the section I just finished. And these are not issues of ability or intelligence. They are LSAT test day mistakes, the kind of mental, environmental, and strategic slip-ups that can derail even a well-prepared student. And so I'm going to walk you through the 7 biggest LSAT test day mistakes, why they happen, and exactly how to avoid them. The first big mistake is practicing in the wrong format, training in a totally different environment than the one you actually face on the real exam. And so if you've been practicing mainly on PDFs, books, or third-party platforms, you're not preparing yourself for the actual LSAT interface, which is what you'll use on test day. The real LSAT on Law Hub has the exact fonts, the real highlighting and underlining tools, the real navigation buttons, the real countdown timer, the real screen layout, and the LSAT is a test where format familiarity matters just as much as content mastery. You don't want to burn mental energy on test day thinking to yourself, how do I highlight this? Where's the flag button? Why does the timer look different? And why is the passage screen taller or narrower than what I'm used to? You want the format to feel so familiar that it barely registers. And so there's a pretty simple fix for this. In the weeks leading up to your exam, you want to do every full practice test and as many timed sections as possible on LSAC's Law Hub platform. You want to practice with the exact tools you'll use on the real exam until the interface feels boring and predictable. That one change alone eliminates a huge amount of test day friction. The second big mistake is letting the proctor rattle you. You don't want the proctor to break your focus, and proctors do that in a lot of different ways. They might pop up in the chat mid-section, they might suddenly start talking unexpectedly, a new proctor might take over halfway through, or in person at a testing center, someone might be pacing behind you or typing loudly. And so if you're not ready for this, that can completely derail your train of thought. And so before the first section begins, you want to calmly send the remote proctor a short, polite message. Ask them, if you need to speak with me during the test, could you first please pause my timer? They're not always going to listen, of course, but some will. And at least you've established expectations and regained some sense of control. And if a new proctor comes in later, you want to repeat the same message. And that simple step keeps you grounded. It helps you stay focused on what matters, the exam on your screen. Your rule on test day is the proctor does not get to control your mindset. You get to control your mindset. The third big mistake is getting stuck on a single question. Many students hit one difficult logical reasoning or reading comp question, and they convince themselves they have to solve it right now. So they'll dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Then 3 minutes go by, then 4, then 5, and meanwhile, the rest of the section is still sitting there full of questions you probably would get right, and that is a disaster for your score. The LSAT does not reward you for wrestling with a hard question. Every question is worth the same, one raw score point. And so your strategy is simple. If a question is not clicking quickly, you flag it, you put down your best guess for now, you move on, and you come back later if you have time. This protects your pacing, you avoid spiraling into panic, and when you return later, the question often feels easier because your brain has had time to reset. One tough question should never cost you the entire section. Fourth big mistake, staring at the countdown timer. A lot of students obsess over it, and this is one of the more subtle test day mistakes, but a very destructive one. If you stare at the timer constantly, you are spiking your anxiety, you're breaking your concentration, you're making things feel harder than they have to, and it's stealing mental bandwidth that you should be spending on logic and reasoning. But the good news is that you can hide the timer on the LSAT. All you've got to do is click it. It'll disappear. It'll, of course, automatically reappear during the last 5 minutes of the section, but that's all you need to wrap up and check flagged questions. Your goal ideally is to develop internal pacing. You want to know how long a question takes you, how long reading a passage takes, and you want to know your rhythm for yourself so that you don't need to constantly stare at the clock. Fifth big mistake, bringing past sections into the next section. So let's say you finish a section and you immediately start thinking through what went wrong. You're replaying questions in your head, speculating about mistakes, and analyzing things that you can't change. Then you carry that emotional weight into the next section, and suddenly that section starts off badly too. Not because you lack ability, but because you're not mentally present. The LSAT doesn't just test logic, it tests your ability to stay present. And so a simple rule would be once a section is over, it is completely gone. You do not carry it with you into the next section. And so during the break, stand up if they'll let you, relax your shoulders, shake out your hands, take a few slow breaths, and consciously say to yourself, that section is finished. The next one is all that matters now. Every section is a fresh start. The sixth big mistake is treating this one test date like it's your only chance. While the LSAT as a whole is incredibly important, no one particular test date will make or break you because you can always retake, and the LSAT is offered 8 times a year. And so if the November LSAT didn't turn out your way, you've got January. If January doesn't go your way, you've got February, and so on. And when you believe everything in your life depends on one test date, anxiety spikes and you second guess yourself. And the good news is that law schools only consider your highest LSAT score on record. They don't average multiple scores, they don't punish retakes, and the LSAT is offered more often than ever before. I'm not saying to treat it lightly, but don't treat it like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You can always come back stronger. Now, the seventh big mistake, and then I'll offer a bonus one, an extra one. The seventh one is trying something new on test day, like a new pacing system, a new note-taking strategy, a new diagramming shortcut. Test day is not the time for experimentation. The LSAT rewards consistency. You want to walk into test day knowing how to approach each section, what to do when you get stuck, how to use your breaks, how to read passages, how to manage time. Everything on test day should feel rehearsed, like you've done it all before. If you want to experiment, that's great, but do it during your practice tests. On test day, you just want to execute. Now for the bonus tip, don't rely on LSAT's built-in search function. A lot of people still think they can use Control F on reading comp, but LSAT has locked it down. You cannot do Control F anymore. They've replaced it with their own built-in search function, but it's slow, it's unreliable, it's inconsistent, it's glitchy. You don't want to count on it during a timed exam. So don't build your reading comp approach around the idea of searching. Instead, focus on understanding the passage structure. What's the main point? What role does each paragraph play? Where are the opinions located? What are the specific details being introduced and where are they? And what is the author's attitude? If you highlight strategically and understand structure, you won't need any search function to find what you need. So to recap the 7 mistakes: first, practicing in the wrong format; second, letting the proctor disrupt you; 3, getting stuck on one question; 4, staring at the timer; 5, carrying stress from one section into the next; 6, believing everything depends on this one test; and 7, trying new strategies on test day; and finally, bonus 1, don't rely on LSAT's search function.